Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to, we don't have a name for Friday, Fancy Friday! Today's Fancy Friday.
Forgotten Friday?
Forgotten. We had some good trivia yesterday on our Patreon account. We had a sweet baby Krishna. We had some great. Do you remember the trivia, Mara?
Yeah.
I stumped Mara.
Repeatedly.
See if we could
On the sweet baby Krishna?
Yeah.
About Usha?
The name, we read Usha and Aniruddha. Great story.
Yeah.
But here was one. And if you were on the show yesterday, you can't answer. What is the name of Krishna's bow? Krishna's bow has a name.
I know that one.
You know that one, right?
Sharangadanu.
Sharanga.
Sharanga.
Oh, speaking of stories, you know what? I got someone buzzed my buzzer
Someone buzzed your buzzer?
someone buzzed my buzzer at about 9 p.m. last night or something like that.
You buzzed my buzzer. Yeah.
And I went downstairs and look what I found.
What is it?
It's the Ramayana box set.
The Ramayana box set. We're all
Yeah.
in comics.
All right.
You got to pay for the app.
Stuff.
Not worth it. Just get them.
Let's get them.
Hey, speaking of Krishna miracles, can I read you
Yeah.
Charles McKinnon's Krishna miracle yesterday? I didn't tell him I was going to read it live.
Well, what am I going to say? No, now you see, you got me handcuffed here.
Surprise Kaustubha, so he doesn't have a choice.
I think there's a follow-up to this too, right, Kaustubha, that Raghu probably doesn't know about.
I'm not sure. I don't. I forget.
We'll see. We'll
okay.
see.
Listen first. All right, so if you're new to this whole game we're playing, is people have been writing me in on my Instagram account at Raghunath Yogi. They're Krishna miracles.
They're ordinary coincidences that Raghunath then labels as.
It's not ordinary coincidences, man. First of all,
kidding.
coincidences are not ordinary. And when they're in a divine way, they're like even more magical.
All right, let's hear.
Learn to see the magic, Kaustubha. Put on the magic goggles.
I will be the judge if this
Listen
is
to
magic
Krishna.
or not.
Listen to Charles's Krishna miracle alert. He says, last week or so, I have been thinking about taking the leap and getting my own set of Bhagavatams.
Oh, yeah,
But,
this was a miracle. This one.
but it is a little out of the price range because they're expensive. They're like volumes and volumes of books. So I kind of set the idea aside and thought to myself, I just need to be patient and keep studying, and it will come to me when I'm ready for it. Fast forward to today. I was parked downtown, and just as I'm getting into my car, I look up and I see a used bookstore. I think to myself, maybe I will just check and see if there are any books by Prabhupada. I walked in to the Eastern Philosophy section, and boom, Krishna Miracle. The second canto, part 1, by Swami Prabhupada. This exact book we are reading, currently working through, Wisdom of the Sages.
That's a miracle.
What are the chances? Anyway, not the full set, but just what I needed in the moment.
Okay, we got a follow-up to that miracle.
Miracle.
It gets
There's
even more. It gets more special.
What?
Yeah.
Is it like, and there's like he didn't write me? But he wrote you?
He didn't even have
He
to
wrote
write.
you part
I
two.
witnessed the miracle.
Yeah. What happened?
I was there too.
Yeah, I
You
even
were
played a
working in the
role in the
bookstore.
miracle.
You were working in the bookstore, and
He planted it.
Kaustubha handed me the book.
No,
And Merrick
when-
drove by and delivered pakoras.
So on Wednesday, we had Vaisheshika for Patreon members, Vaisheshika Das.
Yeah.
You know, he gave a talk. It was great about entering the fourth dimension. We had a lot of people there. It was like nearly 70 people there for the whole thing.
Wow.
Great talk. It was put up on Patreon yesterday by Mara, and I'm gonna reload it like by itself. It was put up with the weekly stuff, so you can find it there now. But I'll load it up again so people get that notice in the email, and they'll be able to see it individually. So you can all check that out. But at the end, I read him that Krishna miracle, and he was touched because it's so much his life, you know, like to Bhagavatam and distributing it and all that.
Yeah.
And then he said, and by the way, you know, if you can't afford that, you know, get in touch with me. We'll work out. We'll get you your set. So, you know, he said, I don't want anyone that wants a set not be able to get one. So he's going to, somehow or another, he's going to hook up.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Where's the
Charles,
miracle part of it?
I said now look who's a skeptic.
Well, no, because that is an act of incredible kindness, but it's not like a magical miracle. You know what I mean?
Raghunath, everything's a miracle. The fact that he has a heart full of kindness is a miracle. What's the matter with you? Can't you see the magic everywhere?
Miracle. It wasn't a miracle. It was a beautiful.
First of all, we didn't say it was a miracle. We said,
okay. You just said there was a part two.
Yeah, we said there's a continuation of it.
Wow.
But it is a miracle. What is more miraculous than the kindness of the devotee? It's a beautiful thing.
It would. I mean, a miracle would have been if
no.
it got delivered to his house and it was supposed to be going somewhere else and it actually came to his house. That would be a miracle.
Okay, you only seen the surface, right? Go deeper. Go deeper. I want a little
miracles.
Yeah. Well,
we're in a miraculous.
Let's not speak
from
it. Before we go there, there's a couple things we have to say. First of all, Gemma Morgan from Manchester, England, wrote to us. She said, "I hope you're well." She received our leaflet she received the printed leaflets this morning. So she wrote to us because we have these postcards, Wisdom of the Sages postcards. They're really cool. They look good and they got a lot of great information that like makes people want to tune in. And so we sent her those files. She printed them out and received them yesterday, and she's going to take them out and distribute them to people on the Harinam in Manchester, England. And she also says, P.S. I got my mom listening.
Mom listening.
Mom is listening. So she says mom is listening, and she says that we should do the Edinburgh Fringe Festival when lockdown's done. Have you ever heard of that? Edinburgh. Edinburgh.
She's like, oh yeah, I go to Edinburgh all the time.
Oh yeah. So shout out to Gemma Morgan. If anybody wants to get that postcard, we can send you the files. You just write to Wisdom of the Sages 108 at gmail.com, and Mara will hook you up with that. Shout out to Gemma's mom as well. They say mum in England, right? We don't say it like that. Say mom.
Yeah, we say mom.
Say mum.
Okay, we have a Krishna prayer too.
Oh yeah, that's I mean that's more sober note. But you know, our dear friend Ashley Hutton Rodriguez, who we've been answering a lot of her questions on Question Day, her husband was hurt in a motorcycle accident. So Ashley, your husband is in our prayers. If anyone would like to join us in those prayers, please do.
Let's do it right now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Okay. All right, we ready to dive in, Raghunath?
Yep. Let's dive into that sweet, juicy honey pot of nectar.
You got to give that one up. Let that go. Come up with something else. Get hooked on something else. Juicy honey pot of nectar.
That boiling, syrupy honey pot liquid. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4.
Chapter 5.
Chapter 5. Text number 16.
Text number we did.
So unprofessional.
We're on text number 14, Raghunath.
Text 14. Yeah. Okay. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devam sarasvatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of our conquest, one should first offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshvabhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to my heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Mandadamnena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Yes.
Yeah, so there we are again. Text 14.
Okay. You know, why don't we, before we read text 14, why don't we just go back to text 13 for a second?
Text 13.
Okay, and we got, again, we have Narda. This chapter began with Narda. This conversation, what level is it on, Raghunath?
I did your thing last night.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Is level 3. I even quoted this is Kaustubha's level thing.
Why do you laugh at my level thing? It's helpful.
I know it is.
All right. So we're on level 3 right now, which means that it's a conversation being told by Sukadeva Goswami, but he tells of another conversation, 3rd level.
The story within a story within a story.
That's right. Or a story within a story. Story within a story within a story, level 3. And here, there's a conversation. At what point in the history of this, like the whole conception is provided in Bhagavatam and the Vedas is that the universes, they go through these cycles, right? And so
seasons.
Yeah, and Brahma is the creator, like, of the universe, like, and there's many universes, but he's the one that's got the empowerment to create, and he not only creates, but he also begins the population, and had to populate that, to create the bodies and populate those bodies, and some of his early, sons become the progenitors, and they create, all the different species and all that. But Narada is one of his sons. So this is like probably a very early universal conversation, right? And Narada is, I don't know how old, what Narada's age is at this point, I don't know if he's kind of born kind of adult, sort of, or if he's growing up and it's like a little boy Narada speaking to Brahma. Don't know.
Could be a little baby.
A little Bala Narada?
Bala Narada holding a sweet ball.
But so in any case, Narada is asking Brahma, he's saying, like, it seems to me like you create everything. It seems like that this entire universe is your energy, and that you manipulate that and create that energy. But at the same time, I see that you perform austerities, and people perform austerities to get empowered from someone else. So what's going on? Is it you? Is it not you?
Where's it coming from? It's like every little kid is thinking, my dad's the strongest guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so then, yeah, kind of like when you go to work or something, like, my dad must be the boss, and then you say, oh, my dad has a boss too.
Yeah.
So now Brahma is saying, no, this energy is not mine. I'm not actually even really the creator. I'm empowered to create. Without Narayana, what can I create? There's no ingredients for me to use in creation, and I don't have the empowerment to create. So he's the last verse he spoke, he talks about people when they're in a state of illusion, how they speak and what their conceptions are. And he said, those who are bewildered, they always talk nonsense. And being absorbed in thoughts of I, it is I and it is mine, right? I and mine.
I'm me and mine.
I'm me and mine. So I'm the creator. This creation is mine. He's saying that's not me, right? There's someone behind it all. And so we're going to probably read 3 verses today. And the second and the third of the verses today are like really famous verses. They're even sung, like I know Genevieve sings them as like a musical, kind of like as a song, and beautiful poetry. But
Not as a musical, but as a musical poetry.
musically, she sings.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is again, so this is Brahma speaking to his son, clearing everything up. He's
Srimad Bhagavatam, the rock opera.
yeah, and so that I in mind, it means like when people are seeing the world that way, it's like they're kind of putting themselves in the center of the universe, right? And what Brahma is saying, I'm not the center of the universe. There's another center of the universe that I'm centered around. So why don't we dip into text 14?
You know what I've realized? If you're watching this on Zoom, depending on where you lay out your Zoom screen, it could appear that you're like looking off into the distance, like possessed, or it could look like you're looking down. It's got nothing to do with it. Because Mara was looking. It was like she's looking at me this morning, like looking into my soul. I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm just reading an email." It's like, "Oh, all right." Sometimes I may be accused of being spaced out, but I might be looking at something very important on my screen that is very spiritual and not spaced out also. So I gotta make sure I put everything like right next to the camera, right next to here it is. I'm reading this. The 5 elements.
That was one of Raghunath's classics. Like, I'm setting up the show, and then Raghunath just goes off on a complete tangent. It's like I'm carefully trying to like build the foundation, you know. And then,
all right, sir. Ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to read 13 first. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position. But those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense. This is Maya Devi. Being absorbed in thoughts of, it is I, it is mine. So when we're in Maya, when we're in illusion, we start to identify with the body and start to think things of this body are actually mine. When
that
we
is
know.
The disconnected state of consciousness.
Yeah, we think we can possess things.
Yeah. And now Brahma is going to say, no, you got to, everything's connected to Narayana.
The 5 elementary ingredients of creation, the interaction thereof set up by eternal time, and the intuition or nature of the individual living beings are all differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. And in truth, there is no other value in them.
Like, in a sense, what is the value of the leaf when it's disconnected from the tree? Right? Yeah. I mean, I imagine you can find some kind of value, but its real value, right, is when it's alive and it's taking in that energy and transforming it and so on. And so Brahma is saying the 5 elementary ingredients of creation, namely, are
Bhumi, Rapona, Lovayu.
Oh, not the Sanskrit.
Quiz me, I'll come right back at you in Sanskrit.
All right.
So me.
Earth, water, fire, air, ether, the Mahabhutas. So those ingredients, that's Krishna, Narayana, Vasudeva, Krishna creates all of that. And then he makes those elements start to take different forms through the power of time, right? Time is like making the energy come into one form and then break down, separate, and then develop into another form. So also that energy, that force of time, that's also Krishna, Vasudeva, right? And the intuition or the nature of the living beings, that's also, all of that is ultimately, Brahma is not saying, I throw that all together. That's me. No, he's saying, no, it's all coming from another source.
Okay, text 15.
Now, why don't we read the Sanskrit? Why don't you read the Sanskrit for 15 and 16 for us, and sing it for us?
Oh, this is the beautiful one. Narayana Paraveda Deva Narayana Gajaha Narayana Loka Narayana blew the last one. Narayana Paramakaha.
That's because you went loco in the previous line.
Narayana Paraveda Deva Narayana Gajaha Narayana Paraloka Narayana Paramakaha.
That was almost on the level of Genevieve. Not quite.
The Vedic literatures are made by and are meant for the Supreme Lord. the demigods, are also meant for serving the Lord as part of his body. The different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and the different sacrifices are performed just to please him.
So, and why don't we go ahead and read the next one as well? Because they kind of go together.
Okay. Narayana para yogo, Narayana paro yogo, Narayana param tapaha, Narayana param jnanam, Narayana paragati. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
All different types of meditation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Narayana para yoga, are meant for realizing Narayan. Narayana param tapa, all types of tapas are meant for achieving Narayan. Narayana param jnanam, right? All types of intelligent thought, intelligence, culture of knowledge is for getting a glimpse of Narayan. And ultimately, salvation, Narayana param gati. Gati is like the goal. Narayan. So ultimately, the supreme gati is to enter the kingdom of Narayan. It's great. It's like Narayan. That's where we're going with all of this stuff. This is the verse. This should be a tattoo, this verse. Okay. This should be a t-shirt, a tattoo, a mug, because it's all going there. You know, this should be, every yoga teacher should have to say this verse. Where does up dog supposed to take you? To Narayan.
To Narayan, there you go.
Where's your pranayama supposed to take you? To Narayan. If it's not taking you to Narayan, you're not doing it right. It's the goal of everything. Why should we be ethical? Because ethics can lead us to Narayan. Right?
In other words, when you say ethics, you're speaking about the yama and niyamas?
Yeah, ethical behavior, morality. Why are people...
Its ultimate value is in its ability to help you connect with Narayan.
Yeah, when people say you ought to do this, why should I ought to do it? Right? I was listening to Tukram give a class. He was like, these are all metaphysical statements. When you say someone ought to do this, you should believe in this. We should care about animals. We should care about the environment. Why? Says who? Why should I care about anything? Because you think I should? What makes what you think? If everything we believe is just what we believe, why should we do anything? I believe trees suck. You know, kill all the trees. I believe the earth stinks. Why should we believe it?
Well, I suppose they could say, well, because without the trees, then there's nothing to kind of purify the air.
Yeah, who cares?
And we'll all choke and die.
Who cares?
Because we'll suffer.
Yeah, because so suffer.
But I don't want to suffer.
Okay, that's your problem. I want to suffer.
Well, then
I want to suffer, and I don't care. And so the ideas of ethics come from a way to bring us to a higher plane of existence. And there is an absolute idea of what, right? Like an atheist will say, there's no absolute truth. You can't say that. There's no absolute truth. That itself is an absolute statement. So the idea is that ethics, morality, it's not just there for being nice, and they're not just supposed to be leftovers of some Christian kingdom. They're meant to bring us to a place of liberation. There's a reason why we're doing all this stuff. In yoga culture, there's a reason why we're doing yoga culture. It's not just because, oh yeah, it's the same as any other culture. It's not. Different cultures are different, and they bring you to different places. This whole culture of the Vedas brings you to liberation and brings you to connection. Narayana para yogo, Narayana param tapa. There's a reason I want mystic powers, Kaustubha. It's not just to perform mysticism. It's to bring people to Narayan's lotus feet.
All right, if that's really your purpose, but you could become confused. I had a friend, one of my friends when I was a kid. It's weird. It's gonna sound weird.
Hey, don't go off track here. This is
no. This is going right to your point about basically what you're saying is that conceptions of good and bad are, unless you accept the divine source, then they're just relative. Right? Because who can say whose conception is better than another person's?
Yeah.
Right. And so this friend of mine, we were friends when we were kids. And then I became a monk. And I just left New York, and I was gone for a long time. And I was back in New York. I'm walking down the street in my monk robes and everything, and I bump into an old girlfriend of mine.
From like high school?
Well, when I was in high school, yeah. But, from downtown.
Yeah.
And so we're just catching up, like what happened to
You're
this
a monk.
person?
You're a
I was
monk at this time.
Yeah.
That's awkward.
It was
You're
cool.
a monk and you catch up with an old girlfriend. You're like, this is weird.
Maybe for you, it wasn't weird. For me, I was just like, hey, nice to see you again, Okay. So she was filling me in on all these different people. And then she said, did you hear about this person? And this person was one of my best friends when we were kids. Yeah.
What happened?
I said, no, what's he up to? He became the head of the New York chapter of the Church of Satan.
The Church of Satan.
Yeah.
What do you say? Congratulations to that.
Oh, congratulations
like
on your
president
or ordination or whatever you go to. So he was like the president of the New York. Now, so anyway, I looked a little bit into what the Church of Satan really is, and it's not like they actually believe in Satan or anything like that. What they're trying to do, and actually,
they don't even believe in the church. They don't even believe in Satan, the Church of Satan.
No. It's what it's about.
Well, where can I go if I want to learn how to worship Satan then?
I don't know.
If I can't find it at the Church of Satan,
where can I find it?
What a dead end.
Yeah. No, but what the Church is saying, it's interesting because it's almost like they get a little bit about like the whole Vedic kind of conception of how the mind works. They believe that Christian upbringing has left some scars in their minds that are preventing them from actually enjoying life. Right. They're like atheists. They don't believe in God at all, but they believe that the church has imposed these hang-ups in our mind.
Sure.
Even to manipulate us, I suppose, or whatever. And so they perform rituals, kind of like anti-Christian rituals, in order to kind of free themselves from that bondage, from those samskars. So in any case, I looked him up online and I found an interview with him where, he was being interviewed on the radio. And so he was pushing this idea that all conceptions of good and bad, there's no truth in any of them. They have absolutely no, what one person sees as evil, another person could see as good. And there's no one can judge what is better or not because God doesn't exist.
Oh, really?
And therefore there's no foundation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So there should be no law and order then.
Well, he wasn't necessarily saying that.
Well, that's the conclusion of those statements. There's no one should judge, really? A judge shouldn't judge because I'm a mass murderer, but don't judge me for it.
Well, let me make my point. So he was, throughout the entire interview, he was pushing this idea. And then at one point the interviewer said, well, what about like child abuse and pedophilia? He said, well, of course, that's like that.
You got to put it in somewhere. Well, who says that's wrong?
Yeah, yes.
We say it's wrong.
So, I mean, he didn't even catch on, but you just kind of contradicted everything that you've been saying,
It's true. It's true. You can't, the problem with that philosophy is you can't actually live it.
It's impractical.
It's impractical.
And the fact that it's so impractical should indicate to us that there is a source of ultimate truth, right? And here, the creator, the universal creator, is saying it's Narayana.
Yeah, because people could argue, well, then it's ethics, morality, behavior. It's meant to bring it to peace. What if someone just says, well, I don't give a crap about peace. We're all gonna die. I don't give a crap if I die tomorrow. You can't. It doesn't work. It doesn't. Where subjective truths don't work. Yeah,
it ties into a little bit what we were speaking about when we had Brahma Das on the show a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about consciousness. And we've been fed by certain scientists for a number of decades is that consciousness is just a material phenomenon. That when you mix the material ingredients to a certain level of complexity, it takes on what we call consciousness, right? Which to me, again, it's that idea. It's like you may have intelligence to kind of like analyze things, but when it comes to the final conclusion, you went so far off, maybe because of your psychological disposition or something like that. But I get it that my computer doesn't experience anything in the way that I do. My computer is just a machine. It's not conscious, whereas I'm conscious. So even if my computer mimics consciousness, I know that there's no person there experiencing. And you can't create a computer that actually does. You know.
There you go. There's got to be a computer programmer.
Well, there's got to be,
Got to be
but
an
even
observer who's looking at the computer.
That's right. It's the observer that actually experiences through a computer. Similarly, the soul experiences through the body and through the mind, and that's a irreducible element. You know, consciousness is irreducible. In any case, his point was that idea is gaining a lot of traction now in scientific circles, which was a large part of what Srila Prabhupada wanted to convey through that whole Bhakti-yogi Institute.
Yeah, it's a different world right now as far as like understanding consciousness, even rational, so-called rational people believing in consciousness, concepts of spirit,
because
quantum mechanics.
If our consciousness is just a material, it's just something that's like a combination of chemicals, then why would it be sacred? And why should we honor it in any particular way? And as you're saying, why should murder or violence or any of these things be bad?
Yeah, they're just leftover remnants of some Christian idea of good and bad. When in fact, if what we are is just a bunch of chemicals, then it's all nothing. And it doesn't even matter. Then even this Zoom meeting of talking about sweet baby Krishna, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. It doesn't matter. And that's a very, very crazy world to live in.
Yes, and that's the world we're living in right now.
It could be dissembled at any moment.
Yeah.
It's not the world we live in, because if it was the world we live in, it'd be even much more chaotic.
Well,
if we actually live that truth.
Well, let's put it this way.
I would just start wrecking things.
You know, I tell you something. I get the point. I think I get the point that you're making.
Don't give me that look, Mara. She's giving me the
No, but hear me out. A lot of people blame religion for all the problems in the world, and certainly a lot of the problems in the world have been instigated through religious institutions. But what would it be like if there were, for instance, you can point to Christianity, for instance, and say, look at all the problems that Christianity has caused. But what if Christianity wasn't there at all?
It'd just be a free-for-all.
What would the world look like if we never had, a Gandhi or a Saint Francis or so much of the philosophy and the sentiments that have grown out of the teachings of Jesus Christ? What would the world look like then?
Well, I will say, what would the world? I know religion's caused so many problems. What has irreligion and materialism caused?
Right.
What is it causing today? What has it caused historically? Just a study of history.
Right. So what Bhagavatam is teaching, and what all great spiritual teachers are teaching, is that life, consciousness, that's an emanation from that original divine source, and it's sacred. And that means, and therefore ahimsa, right? Therefore nonviolence. Therefore Krishna is saying in the Gita, that one who's a kind friend to every living entity is very dear to me, right? Because they see how sacred life is, right? Therefore vegetarianism. Therefore, all of these things.
There is no room for compassion, for empathy, for sympathy in a world where we're just chemicals. It doesn't even, why? It would just be like a big why. And the idea is that all these things, empathy, compassion, sympathy, nonviolence, they start to cultivate what we are and that we forgot about. And this is the uncovering of that jewel. You're the jewel in the lotus, Kaustubha, that jewel within this carcass. There's a jewel within this carcass, and we're here to excavate it. That's what the whole yoga process is.
The jewel in the carcass, okay.
Jewel in the carcass. That's my new tattoo. I'm the jewel of the carcass.
So in this last of these, second of these two verses, Krishna mentions that all different types of meditation or mysticism are meant for realizing that divine source, Narayana. all austerities are aimed at achieving that divine source, Narayana, right? The culture of transcendental knowledge is for getting a glimpse of Narayana. And ultimately, salvation is entering into the kingdom of Narayana.
You know what I'm realizing, Kaustubh? This is going to ruin people's life right here. This statement. Everybody on Zoom, your whole material life is over. This is the essence right here of the entire teaching. Now, whenever you use this as the gold standard of spiritual philosophy, if someone says, hey, I'm into this spiritual practice, you're going to be like, well, what's the goal of it? Like, it's very clear what the goal of it is here. And whenever you hear any other philosophy, did you ever do that when you first got into Bhakti? You're like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And then you put it against something else, normal. You compare and contrast, just like if you're buying an avocado. It's the same type of thing. Well, this avocado is riper. This is the goal, and it's very clear what the goal is. And you're going to use this as the sounding board or the gold standard of where we're going with all this. And it is really clearly explained, and nothing will ever be the same now. I'm sorry to say this. Your material life is now over.
Well, you're right.
Right? It's true. You get to this point in Bhakti where you sort of like get it, and then you use that to compare everything else with.
Now, and again, if you look at it like in context, the Bhagavatam is the book where the author is trying to clear up everything. And we're still like relatively right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, because, you know, the first canto, we didn't even get to the conversation of Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Pariksit, which is what the Bhagavatam is all about. So that conversation begins in the beginning of the second canto. And the first question asked is, what should I do? I'm about to die. What is a person meant to do when they're about to die? And then the second question was, tell me about creation. So this is the answer to the second question in the Bhagavatam, really. And to answer that question, Sukadeva Goswami says, well, let me tell you about when Narada was speaking to Brahma, the creator of the universe. And then right off the bat, he says, are you the source of everything? Are you that which everything is centered around? You know, Narada is asking Brahma, and Brahma is saying, no, 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 no. And then he hits you with these two verses, right? And these two verses are just like emphatic, because they mention Narayana in every line, in 8 lines in a row, right? It's like, you know, what does it take to get it through your head? You know, Narayana Paro, you know, is right. Narayana Para Veda, Deva Narayana Gajaha, Narayana Para Loka, Narayana Para Makaha. I said it 4 times. Is that not enough? Okay, let me continue. Narayana Para Yogo, Narayana Param Tapa, Narayanam Param Jnanam, and ultimately Narayana Paragati.
This is a good shloka for people to memorize.
Yeah.
If you don't, 2, 5, 16. Mara, you should learn this one.
Or why not 15? But we learn them both, right?
We'll learn them both. Okay, Mara, I'll learn both of them.
Mara, get on that.
Get on that, Mara.
They're not hard ones to learn.
No, it's easy ones to. Matter of fact, they could be your first shloka that you learn if you've never learned one. 2, 5, 16. Just walk around and say, write it on a card. Come on, people. It's not so hard. Don't immediately dismiss me when I come up with an idea like this. You write it on a little card. You put it in your pocket. Every time you're just standing around, read it. Every time, make a rule. Every time you walk into the kitchen, you're going to read that card. It's that simple.
Okay, it's that simple, and so repetition, particularly
is the mother of Kaustubha.
I was going to say that.
We're going to say that. Okay.
No, so repetition, from what I understand, in Sanskrit poetry is considered like a fault rather than an ornament. So when something's repeated, it means that there's like, it's really important.
Oh, it's emphatic.
Yeah, that's right. It's emphatic. Just like 934 in the Bhagavad-gita, you know, man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuro mam eva. You know, it's like, it's Krishna saying in that verse, me. And then people will interpret that and say, when he says me, he doesn't really mean Krishna. He means the dark unknown within. You know, but it's like, well, hold it. If he wanted to give the clear message that it was him, what would he have had to do? Like, he's doing all that he can so that you get the point by saying me 5 times. That's the central verse of the entire Bhagavad-gita, right? It's like,
Right.
It's 9:30. It's the end of the 9th chapter, which there's 18 chapters, so it's like right in the center of the Bhagavad-gita. It's the central message of the Bhagavad-gita, and in that central message, he repeats me like 5 or 6 times. What would he have had? There's no way that he could have been more emphatic. So and that's why Prabhupada called his Bhagavad-gita as it is, because it's like, I'm not going to try to twist out another interpretation. If Krishna's saying that ultimately he's the center of all existence, and the goal of yoga is to connect with him, well, then we're going to present it that way. And here in the Bhagavatam, we see the same thing, that the senior person, the most learned person, the most knowledgeable person in the universe is speaking, and he's saying Narayana, 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 Narayana. You get it, Narada? You get it, my son? It's Narayana. So in the commentary to this text, Prabhupada speaks about these practices, of the different practices of yoga. He says, in meditation, there are 2 systems of yoga, namely Ashtanga yoga and Sankhya yoga. So Ashtanga yoga is the practice of concentrating the mind, releasing oneself from all engagements by the regulative process of meditation, concentration, sitting postures, blocking the movements of the internal circulation of air, etc. So that's one way to practice yoga, right? Ashtanga yoga. And then there's another way, Sankhya yoga, sometimes called Jnana yoga. And that is, he says, Sankhya yoga is meant to distinguish truth from the ephemerals, right? So it's a process of like analysis. What is real and what is false, right? What is truth and what is illusion? He says, but ultimately both systems are meant for realizing the personal Brahman. Generally, that's the way they're taught, to connect with the impersonal, non-personal energy of God.
These are traditional yoga schools. This isn't like the yoga school in your hometown. Imagine you signed up for like a yoga class and you're like just talking Sankhya yoga the entire time, distinguishing truth from falsity. I want my money back. I thought this was a hot yoga class. This is hot yoga. This is the hottest of yoga. We're going to break down the material elements. Sorry about that, Kaustubha.
No, it's all right. So he's saying, so both of these systems, Ashtanga yoga and Jnana yoga, or Sankhya yoga, says ultimately both systems are meant for realizing that generally, if you read the Bhagavad-gita, it's going to say that they're meant to connect you to Bhakti-yoga, right? Like that's where they're ultimately meant to lead. But on their own, they can approach that impersonal aspect of God. But he says, but that Brahman, Prabhupada is saying here, is but a partial representation of Narayana, the personality of Godhead. As we have explained before, the impersonal Brahman effulgence is only part of the personality of Godhead. Gita will say, Brahmano, I think he's going to refer to that here, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I'm the basis of that impersonal Brahman. It comes from me. So impersonal Brahman is situated in the person of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, Brahman is the glorification of the personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita and in the Matsya Purana. Mara, what's the quote from the Matsya Purana?
No. I was blowing my nose.
I have no idea either. So let's look at these 2 systems a bit. We got a few minutes here. We got about 13 minutes, What is Ashtanga yoga? What's going on there? The idea is that if the mind is between me, like if the mind is like water, like let's say it's like a lake or a pond, and there's my reflection on the water. If I want to see myself, I look to the water, like the soul looks to the mind. But if that water is moving, if it's rippling, I'll get a distorted conception of myself. And so similarly, like we, because we live in the mind, which is composed of matter and is always moving, which is the nature of matter, we have a confused conception of the self, and we lose touch with our true nature. Now, the idea of Ashtanga yoga is I want to settle that mind, settle it, hold it still. So when it's settled, I can actually experience, have an experience of my true self. And that's why, the Yoga Sutras begin with stating that, yoga is the settling of the fluctuations of the mind. Then the seer abides in their own true nature. All right, but that's a very difficult process to do. It's kind of a mechanical process, where you have to control it's like incredible self-discipline. and then incredible discipline of the mind. But if you look, say, at the chapter 6 of the Gita, right, there's those verses show that the value of that is that ultimately leads to bhakti. It ultimately, if after you've settled your mind, you say, I want to know the person God, then it becomes, its true value is discovered, right? So when you go to the Bhagavad-gita 6th chapter, there's really great verses in that chapter. You know, that chapter describes what it's like to practice yoga, how you go off to the forest, and the renunciation that's involved, and the concentration that's involved. But then you see, even in that chapter, Krishna's going to say how it all leads to him. He'll say, like, this is text 13 and 14. One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Right? All this is to help focus the mind. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free of sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the goal of life, the ultimate goal of life. You know, so what's the value of settling that mind? Ultimately, it's connected to Narayana. And then later on in that chapter, if you look at these are some of the really great verses in the Bhagavad-gita, like 27 through 31 in chapter 6.
27 to 31.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in other words, once the mind is settled, where are you going to focus it on? You're going to focus it on Narayana, right? So Krishna says, the yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. Thus, the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contaminations and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the Supreme Lord, everywhere. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me.
We'll read that one again. That's such a good one.
It's such a
Gives
great,
me chills.
yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Right? It's a great verse. What number is that?
30.
What's the
May
Sanskrit?
as well read 29 because it leads right into
What's the Sanskrit of that one?
Sanskrit is
The one who sees me. Oh, yep.
Yomam pasyati
Yo mam pashyati
sarvatra,
sarvatra.
sarvam cha mai pasyati.
This is a good one to learn, Mara. I'm looking out for her.
I'm glad you are. Text 29 says, a true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Literally, that's kind of like what Narayana means. It means like the refuge of every living being, or the refuge of mankind. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the Supreme Lord, everywhere. For one who sees me everywhere.
This is it.
And who sees everything in me, I'm never lost. And this is such the beautiful part. He not only says, I'm never lost, but he says, nor is he ever lost to me.
Nor are you ever lost to him. Isn't that a beautiful?
As far as I understand, that verse, this is my own interpretation. There may be some scholars that will say something different, right? But if you look at the Vedas, and if you look at the Upanishads, in those texts, when it talks about doing some kind of ritual or sacrifice to please a god, it says you'll get this result, right? But here what Krishna is saying is, he says something, this talks about how that god is affected by your devotion. You don't hear like, if you do this ritual to Agni, you know, you hear you'll get this or you'll get that, but you don't hear, and Agni is so pleased with you that he never stops thinking about you, right?
This is Krishna's attachment to the Bhakta.
Yeah,
That's
here,
so beautiful.
yeah. This is like the end of the 6th chapter is like the mood of the middle chapters, which are all about bhakti, where Krishna really starts to reveal his heart. It kind of bleeds over into this, you know, towards the end of the 6th chapter. So Krishna says, he not only says, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I'm never lost. But then he talks about how he's affected. And he says, nor is he ever lost to me. If someone turns to me in that way, I'm moved by that. How can you move the immovable? How can you move, you know, God, who's like the source of everything? But that devotion moves him. And then he says, such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances. And that's Narayana, right? Like always in the refuge of that divine source.
By the way, if you've struggled through the Gita at one time in your life, and you've sort of put it down perhaps now, and to study the Bhagavatam with us, you are going to go back to that Gita. If you try it today, you'll go back to the Gita, you're like, I completely understand this now. By diving into the Bhagavatam, you will get the Gita very easily now, which seems so difficult. Probably, anybody experienced that yet?
It's like it's like I don't know if I don't want to use onion as the thing, but it is like layers and layers, right? You go through layer and layer, and it becomes more and more clear.
That's a 12-step thing, right? Peel the onion, Nancy.
Is it?
Yeah, she says, yep, it is. But we don't use that here. We say the gobstopper.
The gobstopper.
The gobstopper. It's layers and layers.
But it will, you know, like you said, like what you just said, like you get goosebumps or something like that. I feel that way more and more as I read the Gita. It's just like, whoa, you know, it's so clear, and Krishna's personality starts to come through it, you know.
You know, I got a random call from Andrea Kay from the Sangha Center in Beaver, Pennsylvania. Remember Andrea Kay? She used to always be on the show live. Haven't heard from her in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then she called me up and said, yeah, I'm what do you call it? Me and my friends just had a weekend in New Vrindavan at this Krishna temple on a farm. And she's like, it was incredible. It was so fun. And after 2 years, I go, do you still listen to the show? I listen every day. See, that's the interesting thing. There's so many others out there. You have no idea that they're out there listening. They just listen to them secretly, you know, and we don't see them. So
it drives Raghunath crazy.
It drives me crazy because if I don't see you, I worry about you. What happened to them? What happened to her?
Yeah.
And so she said, no, I listen every day. I just can't listen at 5 a.m. But she says, after 2 years of listening to the Bhagavatam and then going to a temple, like everything made sense.
That's great.
Isn't that cool? Because I know when I first went to the temple, nothing made sense. It was like, what is going on here? It's just so weird. It's amazing. Hearing every day is going to change the way we see the world. It's going to change the way we study. It's going to change the way you look at even the same spiritual path you grew up in, perhaps. It changed the way I look at Catholicism. It changed the way and how I feel about it. You know, it changed the way I see the Church of Satan.
How do you see the Church of Satan?
And on that note, woo! Thanks everybody for hearing the Bhagavatam every day. It's going to affect us more than you even realize. It's a great day today, that's for sure. And it's a great day to have a great day. Someone said, what's this song? You want to know what this song is? This song is Jai Shri Krishna by the Mayapuris. The Mayapuris are one of my favorite bands. Matter of fact, we had them on the show. We got to get them back on the show. Such a good song.